change of pace. So we have true confessions from a couple of Apttus CLM addicts, right? uh, Introductions, I'm Dave Ghosh. I work for the Alliances team at Apttus. And here to present is Mauro Caputi. He is the CEO of Mainspring, one of our strategic go-to partners for CLM implementation for Apttus. And also a special guest, we have Mike Gustafson. He's a principal architect at Itron. And I'm pretty sure their session is going to be as interesting as the title. So, Mauro, over to you for the presentation. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for giving me the opportunity to speak to you about a topic that is very near and dear to my heart. I don't get a chance to speak about CLM as I, of course, am able to do today, this morning. And for this morning's topic, it's entitled True CLM Confessions. Again, it's an opportunity, guys, for us to interact and share with you from a professional services consulting practice, having done hundreds of implementations, provide a fresh perspective on not just the value of CLM, because I think everyone here in the room can appreciate the value of CLM and its merit, but some of the challenges that we experience along the way. So by show of hands, how many folks here are just about to begin their first phase of a CLM implementation? Show of hands. Okay, so quite a few of you. How many folks in the room have already been down the road of a first phase, if not a CLM program? Show of hands. You keep those hands up if you don't mind. Because these are the folks, guys, that are, for the folks that are just about to begin, they'll be your support group. There'll be folks that you absolutely want to interact with to learn about those challenges. So the trick here, and I tried to invite David Blaine to join me today. He said, no, I only do card tricks. I don't do CLM. But the trick here is, how am I going to get 30 years of experience in a 15-minute Cliff Note version that I can share with you all? So clearly I'm not going to be able to do it all and talk about all the lessons learned. But at the end of the day, what I hope to do is give you some insight on how we've done it for one client, as well as others that have benefited from our approach. So as David mentioned, my name is Mauro Caputi. I'm a partner with Mainspring, one of the co-founders of Mainspring. And I'm joined by Michael Gustafson from Itron. Michael provided his own personal experience in terms of how Itron went through their challenges of an Apttus CLM implementation, and then of course how they were able to get it back on track and set the stage for a CLM Phase 2 that we're about to engage with them in the coming weeks. Quick commercial about Mainspring. Mainspring was basically launched to basically do CLM the right way. And what I mean by that, it's not just helping clients implement and stand up the Apttus CLM solution. It's really focused on also the follow-through. So the strategy and planning through the implementation, providing a managed services and the analytics so that user adoption and the true value of a CLM solution can be harnessed. So again, as I started earlier, it's obviously very clear from the folks in the room that everyone recognizes the benefits of CLM, right? Implicitly, everyone understands what those benefits are. And having done this for close to 30 years now, I often get asked, what's changed? What changed over these last 30 years? And I can tell you that clearly the strategic role of CLM over the last 30 years has definitely changed. When we first started to talk about CLM, it was always going on this sort of missionary educational trip to explain what the value of CLM is. I'm not having to do that today. Also, we're not seeing the tactical only approach of repository only or a place to store contracts. There's tremendous value that can be obtained in process efficiencies, as well as the data itself to support both risk compliance, reducing cost, and of course, enhancing revenue. So part of what we're also doing, and again, I've become very obsessed with quantifying that value. So again, while we all understand and appreciate the value of CLM, how do we quantify it? So Mainspring engaged a team of Columbia University students, master's degree students, to help us quantify that. And we'll provide more on that in a little bit. But it's to show that we absolutely have a passion around finding a way to demonstrate this value. But along the way, despite the aspirations that we all might have to get to that holy grail, and we offer on the left-hand side a maturity curve. which essentially provides the path in which clients essentially progress towards CLM maximum benefits. That maturity continuum, while again, we all have aspirations of getting to that top right-hand quadrant, we inevitably hit a roadblock. That roadblock we call CLM inertia. Clients get stuck. So they may implement a repository, they may implement a number of contract types for efficiency purposes. But again, over time, or because of user adoption, or a number of issues that we'll get into in a bit, they get stuck. And what happens then, it reverts back to a repository-only solution, and the program essentially may stall. So how do we overcome this thrust? So let's talk about the characteristics that we often see. So we have, not only we've done implementations, as I said earlier, we actually support clients beyond the implementation on the follow-through. So for the first time, we're going to publish a summary of some of the characteristics that we see that, again, contribute to less than happy or satisfied users. For instance, use of CLM is discretionary. Sponsorship goes away. When sponsorship goes away, it's sort of the program drifts like an aimless ship. Or it could range with respect to the data itself. The data within the repository isn't trustworthy. So you automatically lose that confidence in clients. On the flip side, knowledge, flexibility, continuous improvement, investment in making and realizing that you're not going to get it right out of the gate with a phase one implementation. This is truly a journey where you assess, you plan, you assess, improve, and optimize. At the end of the day, the key differences, as you see, are not all technology related, right? That's the good news. The technology works. And again, one of the trends that I've seen over the last 30 years, and trust me, my first CLM implementation was based on Lotus Notes. So you can imagine, and I'm dating myself, but that was an application that wasn't necessarily stable to support the technology. Apttus clearly is a very stable solution. And with respect to Apttus' ability to support CLM, what happens is the focus then tends to shift to other challenges. People, process, and data above and beyond the technology. So if you count all the technology-related reasons, there aren't many, right? As I said, it's really focused on the people side, the process, as well as the data. Do these resonate? How many in the room would you say resonates with what you're seeing within your own environment? Excellent. Now, we have survey cards. If I could ask you guys to take one and complete one on the way out during the conference, and if you are able to submit them back to one of us, and the Mainspring guys, just raise your hand, to me, Karthik, or Jim, that automatically qualifies you for a raffle with Mainspring, a prize raffle, okay? But the objective is really to capture and see from a wide variety of client environments which of these really have a profound impact in terms of addressing the key challenges within your environment. How do you fix it is naturally the next question. And how do we get that momentum so that, again, we're able to move this along and get the program back on track for not just a phase one success story, but a phase two and beyond. Step one is identifying those reasons why you engaged in CLM in the first place. It could be scalability, it could be risk compliance, it could be compressing the sales cycle in terms of getting a contract in place and recognizing that revenue. But there's something that spurred and triggered that CLM program. Let's understand what that is. Let's revisit that, and then let's figure out how we quantify it. Let's start measuring those results. And in that way, you're able to, in a very crisp, tangible manner, show that value of CLM. People, during the course of the implementation, get so caught up with the challenges that they lose focus and they lose sight of what it was and the reasons for what triggered and provide what they were after as part of the implementation. So again, if we take a step back, understand why we did it, let's understand those metrics, let's take a baseline against those metrics, then we can start to hopefully see the value and essentially rinse and repeat, right? Go through that process again for the next set of objectives for phase phase 3. So interestingly enough, just to circle back on the research that our Columbia students took on, they looked at, that stole my thunder actually, so at the end of the day, what we did is look at a CLM solution before it was implemented. And as you can see in the left-hand side, a scattering of how long contracts took to close. And you can see several inconsistencies, obviously a number of outliers occurring beyond that 400-day mark. What they noticed that after the CLM solution was implemented, you could see the cluster of the preponderance of contracts closing within 200 days or less. Now, while that may not seem super significant, you clearly wouldn't know that or see that in the middle of 2015, or even at the end of 2015 as you're going into 2016. But over a period of time, sort of like evolution, it's happening, everyone knows it. There's benefits in CLM, everyone knows it. Now you have a really concrete way to show that value and how that's going to contribute to the revenue cycle being increased. So the question is, what do we attribute this to? What are the prime factors that contribute to this? We think it's the visibility and the efficiency of the contracting process, right? The fact that you're able to now, with rigor, understand when a contract request was entered and made, all the way through seeing and supporting the process of getting the contract in place and stored. So that visibility, that efficiency is what we would attribute this to. Now, clearly, there's a lot more work that needs to be involved, right? Because there could be a whole slew of other reasons that contribute to this as well. So we're going to continue our analysis and look for breaking this out even further. Because right now, this is sort of a cluster of all agreements. How do we look at sell-side agreements in particular, or buy-side, right? What value or what differences would we see within those contract types, okay? So there's a lot more analysis that we're going to do, but this is super encouraging, right? We have a real anecdotal evidence, right, within the data captured within the Apttus environment that shows the value that can be brought as it relates to CLM. Okay, so for the next 10 minutes or so, I'm going to ask Mike to basically share again his point of view and his own experience as it relates to the Apttus CLM implementation at Itron. Mike?
Thanks, Marlo. How do I use this thing next?
Just hit the green button.
Okay. So hi everybody, my name is Mike Gustafson. I'm a solutions architect in our IT group at Itron. A little history about Itron. Itron's the world leader in smart metering, manufacturing, and solution services. We have customers in over 100 countries and offices in over 40 countries. So we're a very diverse organization. We started our Apttus implementation last year with a phased approach, starting with our procurement group. And I just kind of wanted to share what our experiences were, lessons learned, and what we're looking at for our phase 2, which is our sales contracts implementation. So some of the challenges that we faced were reluctance. The first one was reluctance to give up on old processes. Prior to Apttus, our contracts were requested via regional distribution lists in email. So a procurement person would just send an email to one of 4 different distribution lists, and it would be up to the attorney to then gather the metadata, store that, work with the vendor, and it put everything on the attorney. So using Apttus, we tried to push all that onus back onto the requester in the procurement organization, and they were very reluctant to do that, obviously, because that increased their workload, but it took the workload off of the attorney. So getting them to give up on that old process was one of the challenges that we faced. Another one was our approval process. We have a very complicated delegation of authority that is just an Excel spreadsheet based on region, agreement value, and different things. And in the middle of our implementation, our entire leadership in the procurement group turned over. So when they came in, they wanted to change the process, change the delegation of authority. And we built that process on Salesforce flows, and making changes to that was very complicated. So having that be a moving target was a really big challenge for us. Communication was also a challenge. We did not communicate enough. You cannot communicate enough. When we went live, there was a lot of confusion about what was the purpose of Apttus. Is it a contracting tool? Is it a procurement tool? Who should be getting in there and using it? You know, getting emails from every employee in the company saying, why don't I have access to Apttus? So getting good communication out there was something that we did not do very well in phase one. A fourth one was training and expectation setting. We did offer many training sessions during the implementation, but we didn't get 100% participation from our teams. We prepared videos with the help of Mainspring, visual aids, and people just didn't use them. So adoption kind of suffered when we first rolled out because I don't think we did a very good job of getting the training out there. So what did we do to overcome these challenges? So for the first one, getting buy-in from our executive leadership was key. Our CIO, General Counsel, and COO were our steering committee, and they said that this is the process. We're not going to use the old process anymore. We turned the old process off. So getting that buy-in from those key stakeholders really helped enforce Apttus as the new process. For the delegation of authority, with the new leadership, their goal was to simplify that and not make it so complex and have users chasing down who the right person is to approve that. And on top of that, we are moving away from the Salesforce approval flows and doing a proof of concept right now with Colin and Apttus on the Apttus intelligent workflow approvals. And that's going very well, and I think that's going to allow us to easily manage and make changes to that delegation of authority process when we need to. The third thing on communication is we have a communication department at Itron, and we didn't use that during this first phase, so we've engaged with them at the start of phase 2 to communicate during the whole implementation process, to let them know what's coming, set expectations on who should be using it and what it should be used for. So hopefully that will help us going forward in phase 2. On the training side, what we decided to do is about 6 weeks after we went live, we held supplemental training sessions with all of those users. And I think that was very helpful because they had been in and using the system and generating questions based on their day-to-day activities. So we were able to tailor the training sessions to those specific questions after the users were in there, because before it was deer in the headlights, you know, trying to get in there and use the system and not knowing how they were going to be doing in their day-to-day job. So that supplemental training really helped, and that's something that we'll do during phase 2 as well. Selling points for phase 2. I mean, this was a big change for us to put this in. We didn't have a CLM system before. And one of the big ones was having a single source of truth for all of our contracts. We've grown mostly by acquisition, so our contract repositories were anywhere from SharePoint libraries to email folders to file cabinets to network shares. Everything was kind of all over the place. It was impossible to search, impossible to find anything without trying to wrangle up 15 people. So having a single source of truth for all of that data was hugely important. The second one, or the third one, was visibility on cycle times. We had no metrics on how long it was taking to get through the contracting process. So having Apttus there to do that reporting allows us to see where we may have problem areas in negotiations, where things are taking longer in certain spots, and also where we're seeing the highest volumes to maybe adjust staffing, adding attorneys or moving people around where we're seeing the most volume. And we just couldn't do that before. Another one is common standard terms and contract formats. We use templates, clauses in the playbook extensively so that we have a common language and a common set of terms throughout the company, no matter what region or what country we're in. And that helped us with cleaning up our supplier data with standard terms, and also some of our other initiatives around revenue recognition that's very important to our company this year. And automation of approvals and e-signature is also very big. Before having automation in there, again, it was a complicated spreadsheet. There was no record of those things being approved other than somebody had an email saying yes, it was approved. So having those automated approvals took the decision making out of the process for the user. It was automatically routed, and there was auditing trail for that, so if we needed it, we had it. And then e-signature, again, before was wet signatures. So trying to track down somebody if they're on vacation for 3 weeks or they're traveling, it was very difficult to get those contracts executed. So having e-signature is also another driver. And lastly, the biggest selling point is it's a corporate mandate. The CEO and the general counsel said, we are going to do this. So make it happen for all those reasons that I stated. So that's why we're doing it. So we're starting phase 2 here in the next couple of weeks, which is our sales contracts, and we're partnering again with Mainspring to do that implementation, and we're looking forward to it. So
great. So we have about
questions
10 minutes left. Yeah, it's probably a good time for questions. For the folks that are about to engage in the implementation, what's top of mind in terms of concerns? Things that you're essentially keeping you up at night as it relates to the implementation. Anything? Data migration? You got, yes, Marilyn. Yes. Buy-in from the sales team, user adoption. Okay. Were you able to address that, Mike?
Well, from our point of view, it wasn't. They didn't have a choice. I mean, we took the other solution away. So the only way for them to get that stuff through was through the system. So having that corporate champion at the C-level was key for that.
Yeah, Mike was actually sharing a story just yesterday how the general counsel is chomping at the bit to get going.
Right.
I mean, she wanted the system up and running by June, and obviously we haven't even started the implementation yet. So there's tremendous appetite that despite the challenges that we experienced in phase 1, taking a look back and seeing, okay, well, what's the value that we can get, and obviously moving forward with that with an eye on those benefits makes this a no-brainer for phase 2. Yeah. Yes. So the question is, if similar situation where contracts are located in disparate locations, on file cabinets, shared servers, what did Itron do to address that challenge?
Yeah. So as part of our phase 1 implementation, we worked with Mainspring to go out and gather all that information, send mass communications using the leadership in the procurement group to find out where all that stuff was. And we went through a very lengthy scrubbing process to clean up all the metadata, to make sure things were matching our supplier master and terms and all that stuff. So it was probably an 8-week process of just gathering that data on a huge master spreadsheet and doing a manual cleanup process. That's all we really could do. Because everything in there was free-form text, so it was all over the place.
Yeah, I mean, just to add to that, one of the lessons learned from, again, doing a number of these implementations is that clients often underestimate the effort required for contracts migration. So the sooner you can get started on it, the better off you are.
Absolutely.
Because you don't want it to be a critical path activity. It shouldn't be. If you start sooner, it ends up being done in conjunction with the implementation. So I highly recommend you get started on that as soon as possible, but there are tools and there's technology that make that process a lot easier. And we can certainly speak about that afterwards if you'd like. Question over here? So the question is, did we consider doing a pilot initiative first, or did we do a sort of corporate-wide approach, or what's the right approach to consider?
So we decided to do a phase approach, like I mentioned, and start with our procurement group. And with that group, we did do a big bang across the globe for that group. With our sales group, it's a lot larger organization, so we are going to do a global phased approach. We're going to do global setup in the system, but roll it out on a region by region basis. Starting with North America, that's 70% of our revenue in North America, so we'll start there, but set the system up to be ready for global, but roll it out in phases.
Yeah, I mean, again, to add to Mike's answer, I would say there's no right or wrong approach with respect to pilot or sort of bigger bang. We profess crawl, walk, and run before you run. So we prefer a phased release approach, minimizes your risk, but it's tied to the value and the ROI that you're wanting to get out of that phase 1. So clearly, the broader the scope, the bigger the impact, the greater the ROI. If you can provide or divide the program into discrete phases, from a risk standpoint, we think it's in your best interest.
Yeah, so we set up our.
What was the question?
How is the approval process working with using Apttus, the IWA versus the way we were doing it before? That's a question. So there was a lot of limitations in the Salesforce approval flows. One, a limit on how many steps you can have, which we met in multiple cases. So we had a lot of workarounds for that. it's very difficult to navigate through those workflows to make changes to it. So with the Apttus workflow engine, everything is on one screen. We can use Xauthor for Excel to manage large changes to that. And it's just going to make it a lot easier and a lot more intuitive to make changes to it, because our organization is fluid. We turn people over, we move people around a lot. So having an easier tool to use to make those changes is the reason why we're looking at IWA.
One more? Time for one more question.
So for organizations that are legal, buy side, no Salesforce, what challenges would we see? At the end of the day, it could vary from how they react to the user interface all the way through just having that additional rigor of the process itself. So if we look at a solution of CLM, people, process, technology, and data, there's challenges associated with each of those independent of the Salesforce platform. And so it varies, but it's consistent regardless of the platform. I'd be happy to speak about that offline.
So sorry, we are out of time.
Are we?
Yeah,
Okay.
so maybe, ma'am, you can talk to them right after this
I'm
session.
around afterwards if you guys would
Yeah.
like to speak, but thanks again for your time this morning, guys. Thank you.
Yeah, and don't forget the survey for the raffle on the way out. Thank you so much, Mike. Thank you so much, Mauro.
Thanks, Mike.
Appreciate it.
You bet.